Okay guys, we've kind of been through a lot around the coffee section, and I just thought it would be good to cover off. The best way I can say is I go to a lot of cafes, I taste a lot of coffee, and I end up talking with a lot of baristas, and there's always a few telltale signs that I can sort of see, which will sort of tell me whether I think the coffee is going to be on point or not. So I thought the best way is probably just to sort of tell you what I look for and what I see. Ultimately, what we're looking to try and do collectively is make better coffee consistently well so that we increase our sales. Okay, so when I come into a cafe, to be honest, the first thing that I look at is a coffee hopper, the hopper on top of the grinder. When I see a dirty hopper, it tells me straight away that the cafe leaves their beans in the hopper overnight. Okay, now whilst that might not seem like a big deal, it means that the coffee's been left out overnight and it goes stale. Okay, coffee, once it's roasted, it's very sensitive. It's sensitive to light, moisture, and oxygen, and it's effectively will start to go stale the longer it's left out in the open. So you want to keep it stored in an airtight container. So when you come in the morning, if I see that the coffee's been left overnight, when you're starting to extract the coffee, you're not going to have that really rich, syrupy pour. It's going to be thin, it's going to be dark, and it's going to lack flavour, and that's when the coffee's going to be going stale. So at the end of each night, you should be closing off the hopper, removing the hopper, putting the coffee either back into the bag it was coming or into just an airtight container, and then just kept in a neutral room temperature, basically. Don't worry about putting it in the fridge. So clean coffee, clean hopper, fresh beans, super important. Just a point on the beans in the hopper. What you want to maintain is a good volume of beans within the hopper itself. Once the beans start to get really low, like you can see here, you've got less weight, and so the beans start to almost popcorn through the blades, and it can impact your coffee grind. Believe it or not, it sounds, but it is true. Sometimes when you're extracting coffee, you'll notice that the pour starts to speed up because the grind has gotten a bit too coarse because the beans have been bouncing through the blades. So having a good volume of beans, it will help the beans to come through in an even weight through the blades, and you'll have more consistent grind. So just a couple of little points, keep your hopper nice and full. The other thing, just moving through, puck press. Once they're used, they start to build up coffee on the underside, and when you start to use them when you're at high volume, you'll start to notice divots in the top of your coffee puck prior to extraction. So it's good to just have a clean, dry cloth, and you can just keep, every 10, 12 coffees, just give it a little wipe to make sure there's no buildup of coffee on the underside, okay? Most importantly, everybody looks at the coffee machine. I want to see a sort of clean, organized area, which will show that it's about attention to detail. Now, where that comes is the group handle itself. People always complain when they have a bad experience with coffee that coffee, it's either bitter or it tastes burnt, okay? Coffee is bitter by default. So everything that happens is normally due to the machine or the equipment being dirty, okay? So being clean is really, really important. The group handles, I will pop the basket out, if I can get it out, and just check the underside. You can get a build-up once you're running lots of coffees of burnt coffee oil. Every time I go and I taste an espresso, if it tastes bitter and burnt, it's because the underside is caked in burnt oil. So just keeping it nice and clean. Every hour or so, or after a busy rush, I'll just pop the basket out. You can rinse the underside with hot water and just keep that clean. Something to avoid doing, which I see a lot of cafes do, is they will actually wash this in between with hot water. You want to avoid doing that. Two reasons. Quite often you'll have leftover water, and then when they dose their next coffee, it starts to dissolve. As the water extracts, it runs around the side of the coffee puck. You don't need to wash it, okay? We want to take the baskets out and clean, but you don't want moisture in here, okay? Also, a little point to note is, think of these like a frying pan. They need to be seasoned with clean coffee oil. You have clean coffee oil residual as you dump out the coffee. So it's a clean surface. If you wash it away all the time, that's kind of not ideal. But clean baskets, clean portafilters, super important. The other part is using your blind filter that we use when we clean the machine at the end of the day, is throughout the course of the day, again, just a quick back flush, just water, just to make sure there's no build-up of dirty coffee grinds. I've made hardly any coffees in here, and already I can see there's build-up of burnt and bitter coffee grind in there. So just a little back flush throughout the course of the morning. Once you've had a busy rush, just keep the coffee tasting clean, okay? And of course, as I demonstrated when I did the menu, I'll always do that before any black coffee that I serve, okay? Moving along, a couple of other things. When extracting coffee, I've gone into detail about how important it is to be specific with our recipe, okay? Using scales, really, really important, tamping, etc. I'm just going to show a couple of things that I've seen a lot in the stores. I've been using a dosing cup. A lot of stores, you don't have to use a dosing cup, but a lot of stores will just grind straight into the portafilter, okay? That's fine. Once I've set my dose, I don't sweep off any excess. If I've set my dose at 22 grams, there's 22 grams of coffee there. I don't want to be sweeping off, as I mentioned earlier, because it will impact on our dose. If I'm using a hand tamp, I see a lot, people rest on top of the bench top. Two things either happen. You can either break off the spouts, or you'll pick up loose coffee grind that will then extract and pour into the cup. It's a big no-no. When tamping, if using a hand tamp, you don't want to be pressing and tapping. We all did that in the barista world for thousands of years, and we do it and we tap like this all the time. What that does is it will put cracks in the bed of the coffee puck, and when the water is pouring through, it will go through the path of least resistance. We don't want that. We want an even, steady flow. So if you're extracting coffee and you're noticing your pour is fluctuating and sort of inconsistent in the flow, it's because it's channeling through the cracks in the coffee puck. So don't be tapping the side with a portafilter, with the hand tamp, okay? Obviously we know it's important to rinse between every coffee just to keep clean. So look, those are just a couple of do's and don'ts. Real basics, but they're kind of the common mistakes that we see day in, day out that has a massive effect on your coffee. That's it guys, all the best.